Hello everyone, welcome back to Game Brigade or King of Averages channel, whichever one this ends up on.
It depends on where we go from here, really. I mean, it really depends.
My name is Bryan.
I'm Michael.
And today I actually invited Michael to come over to my house because I wanted to talk about the board game space and moderation that's happening within groups and behind closed doors that we don't normally see. And obviously this is going to be in response to Liege of Games' recent video that he posted on his channel that I thought was very well done. I commented on it and said, this is one of your best videos. Thought he did a very good job explaining a timeline of sequence of events with timestamps and receipts is like what I like to call it.
Yeah, I made the same comment. Like, this is like journalistic.
100%. It actually made me wonder, like, I wish we had more journalists in our space.
We'll get to that.
You know, people that actually did investigation journalism or whatever.
That will come up.
But effectively, I don't want to obviously make it. I would rather have people watch his video, and you obviously talked about it on your channel today.
Yep.
But I wanted to talk about really quick what happened. He noticed some conversations that were happening on the Facebook page Board Game Revolution, which I had also seen these same posts, and I thought at the time the way the moderation was happening on those posts were very odd. Specifically when people were sharing games that they were interested in from Kickstarter and sharing just a standard Kickstarter link, not referral links or anything like that, the moderators would shut it down and say, this is promotion. Even though it's not a game they're affiliated with or anything. It's just someone sharing a game, which happens all the time on their page.
Yeah.
So it's odd that when it was a Kickstarter thing, it gets silenced. And there was another post about Anuki, I believe, Anuki, where someone was criticizing the publisher, not even criticizing, more just giving critical feedback about what they could do better on their campaign. And the thread was locked for moderation. And I remember reading, like, locked for what? Like, what was this locked for?
Negativity.
And you don't know because he doesn't. It was never mentioned like locked for moderation, negativity, or any like. There was no notes. Just said locked for moderation while we consider further actions, and then it was eventually unlocked. So Chris notices this, and when he sees other mods posting similar promotion posts, he wanted to know: are you sharing this because you like the game, or is this promotion? And effectively, through a whole run of events, Chris was eventually banned from Board Game Revolution. And if you want to see the details of that, I would recommend watching his full video because I think it's very well done. But what really made me want to talk about this is there has been a string of heavy-handed moderation lately in our space, in the board gaming space, that makes me never want to feel comfortable ever sharing an opinion that potentially might go against the norm or what's considered the social norm, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, this video alone
100%
makes me uncomfortable, and it makes you uncomfortable.
We talked about it prior to filming that I was like, my intention for this video is to be very sincere and honest in terms of I think conversation is important, and I hate when we silence voices, anyone's voice. But I was nervous to talk about this because I'm like, I might get in trouble from my community. And this is kind of like...
it depends on your community.
I get it. I think my community is solid and understands who I am as a person. But you're going to have a lot more people watching this than your standard audience.
Sure. Yeah, the moment it gets shared by somebody,
by
right?
one person,
and it gets posted on a Reddit or something like that, that's when it goes south.
Yeah, so I was very nervous about talking about this. This is why we mentioned in the beginning of the video whose channel is this going to go up on. We'll find out. We'll talk about that afterwards. But so one of the things I thought about last night when I was going to bed is I was thinking about the human civilization in general and how...
That's a deep thought for right before bed.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, I was in thought about this video.
Okay.
I watched his video twice. It was so impactful for me because I thought, so if you want to know my personality, I am very much like a righteous good. Like I always want to defend who I think who might be the person who's being silenced, or if I see someone, even if it's someone that did something wrong and they're being like lambasted, I'll still try to protect them because I think there's sometimes misunderstandings, right? That makes sense.
Sure.
So a lot of times I'll be a person who's arguing a point against the whole crowd of people. I feel very stupid. I get called out for it a lot, but I feel like, in my opinion, I'm defending what I think is right.
Sure.
So maybe I'm not right or not.
Yeah.
So I was thinking last night in bed, and I was like, since the Greeks, where they had rhetoric was basically the forefounding of their civilization, and democracy was formed, it was like free speech is important. Allowing people to speak their mind. If you don't mind it, you don't have to agree with it, but listen to what they're saying, because that's how you learn about other people's perspectives.
It's why they had so many philosophers.
Correct, they did.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I don't feel like we have anywhere near the same, but it's also a much bigger world.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I thought about it. I was like, when I look at what Board Game Geek does, and I've seen what other Facebook groups do, or even on some channels that I'm not going to mention any names, but I've seen, like, if someone shares something that might be viewed different than what they're saying is normal, it's silenced, and they're either banned or deleted or blocked or whatever. And I just think it's bad for our space to be so heavy-handed all the time.
Yeah, I agree. There's actually two things I actually took a note. I wasn't answering a text.
He was on his phone.
Something. Yeah, I was because I didn't have my laptop to write a note real quick, and I want to forget things. Before I think we get into even a discussion around what's allowed to be said and what's not, and what different communities choose to regulate, right? Because ultimately it is up to the community to do so, and I think each community is different. Though we do have kind of some powerhouses, right? So like BGG is the biggest board gaming site, period. Correct. And then BGR is the largest Facebook group for board games, period, right? And so that's why we're talking about those two, because they tend to have a similar style of moderation, right? But ultimately it is up to them. One thing I think that's important is, regardless of their decisions, that the tools and practices are not professional in any way. So if you don't know, I did moderate for GameSpot for a number of years. I volunteered to do that. I come from a video game kind of background and space, and then eventually discovered board games and turning off screens, and unless I need to take a note and enjoying that and actually seeing people
in mid video.
In mid just without explaining it or anything like that, just throw people off. And so it's owned by CBS. If you didn't know that, CBS Interactive owns GameSpot. GameSpot.com, at least it did at the time. So a very professional environment with professional tools and stuff like that, right? And so we had a lot of guidelines around stuff like how to deliberate on an action to do, or what to do when you lock it or something. So for instance, like I noted the temporary lock, where they'll lock it and then decide. Yeah. That is already a decision point to lock it. And it actually kills something. So, ironically, CBS now, I don't know if anybody watches Angry Joe here, but what CBS will do whenever somebody like Angry Joe is very negative about something they're making, like a TV show like Picard or something, which is all the time on Angry Joe show, but just in general, they'll pick and choose which ones to mark as copyright. Yeah. And the reason they do that is because they can lock it up for 30 days. It has nothing to do with any kind of legality, which they don't have because of fair use. But they have 30 days to respond, and then on the 30th day, they revoke it because they actually didn't have the right to do it. Because all they need to do is delay it. Because the algorithms, that's how they work. So once you lock a thread, you've now essentially killed that thread, and it will not pick up, except for the people that might happen to be checking it later that already commented and have notifications to get there. Nobody's scrolling that far down in the line, and even if they do, it's not chronological. And so again, the algorithm's just going to bury it because it has zero traction. Suddenly it's a locked thread, it's dead. And so the moment you lock it, you've killed it. You may as well have just deleted it. It's the same thing. At that point,
you've
right?
moderated to a point.
And if I'm able to look at that and think of that and see that, and it's somebody's job, and I don't necessarily care about volunteer or not. You can choose to not volunteer just as well as you can choose to volunteer. It's your job to moderate it. And so if you're saying, I'm going to do that, I'm going to volunteer to do that, you do that. Like, I don't volunteer to, like, rake somebody's old lady's leaves and then just, like, rake them all into the yard and leave. Or into the driveway or something like that. Or you know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm going to say I'm going to do it, you got to do it. Yeah. You can't just make it worse. You can't just, just not put in the effort that it needs to actually do it well. Yeah. Right? And so I don't think that's an excuse. I don't buy that. I've done it myself. And don't volunteer if you aren't up for it.
So a question,
but it's just bad practices, right? Because even if they're not communicating their rules well, right? Because they're unclear. If they're saying we don't even know it, we're deciding what to do. Meanwhile, we're going to kill this. Well, then it's just haphazard. It's sloppy. It's unprofessional.
The one with the Anuki, which they locked. I think that's how you pronounce the name. I don't know how you pronounce
that
game.
Yeah, I think so.
When they locked it, I was very curious of what was the reason for the lock. Was it because it was disparaging?
Well, they don't know, and that's the process, right? So when at GameSpot, we were required to give a reason for the lock. So we would say locking because blank.
Yeah,
and we would do that.
Same thing that Reddit does. They'll say locking because
and then we
Rule
actually
43 or something.
Whatever. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. At least say it. And then we actually had a forum, a separate forum. You weren't allowed to post it anywhere, but you could post there and ask questions about moderations. And it could be you were moderated. It could be you saw a locked thread and had questions.
It's funny because Reddit does that same thing. They have like a town hall.
Most professional places do this.
They have a town hall where people can bring up moderation.
This is what actual communities do, not these like kind of ho-dunk board game ones that we're stuck with.
Well, and what's really interesting about that conversation is that any discussion of moderation on those pages
is a bannable offense.
Ban.
Yeah,
if you ask
that's how I got banned from BGG. I just didn't understand, and they didn't explain it to
moderated?
me.
if you ask why something was moderated, you are banned.
Yes,
and I don't think that's fair.
It's against the rules of BGR too. It's their last rule listed. I went and looked.
So one of the things though that's hard for me, because I'm also a person who's like, if it's private property, it's a private business, they can do whatever they want.
Sure.
But at some point, do you get big enough where you're like, you have like almost like it's like a public space? I don't know. Like, that's a question, and obviously this is all rhetorical, like thoughtful questions, not really meant for have an answer. But at what point do people have to allow discourse to happen, or when can someone just say, I'm banning you because I'm banning you?
It stifles growth.
Yeah.
Right, is what it does. You get to a point eventually where you will limit yourself, and you're the one limiting it, right? That's why I mentioned that the CEO of Wormwood, Doug, right? He saw that the people, he had almost a 50 employee.
This is on your video.
Yes. So on my video, I gave a quick example that I didn't explain fully, because I try to keep things speedy unless it's a video like this where we're talking, where the CEO of Wormwood, the guy who created Wormwood, his baby, he stepped down as CEO voluntarily.
Because he didn't feel like the growth was with him, right?
Well, he felt he was holding it back. So a document came up of people's concerns, and they wanted stuff like an HR person to regulate, pay and stuff like that, and safety and all this stuff. And he inherently himself is against that, because he wanted to be able to say, yeah, you want to work on your personal project, go do that. You want to take out that tool and loan it or whatever, you can do that. But
he was still thinking small business.
He was still, and that's his stance. That's his worldview. That's his. I want to create. I want to do this stuff. And he realized that he was holding back his company from growing bigger and going to its potential. And having people that are actively in it, like the people working and the employees happy. Morale was lower because people were seeing these issues. This was at like the height of the COVID and stuff like that, and they just didn't feel comfortable in the workplace. And so you're seeing that here, right? Where there are people, there's a whole subset of people that are in these groups that want to see it grow and want to see it better, but at the same time, don't feel comfortable in it. Yeah. And it's because of the decisions of the leading people holding it back from its potential. And it's the same thing, and it's I can't imagine how hard it is to do that, to take a step back.
So what about a page like Board Game Geek, where I have not really been involved in any kind of threads that have heavy moderation, but I've seen it.
There's no involvement in it. You can't even read it.
But I don't even know like who's behind that. Like I hear names, but I
okay, so that is exactly my so that's my, I've mentioned this a few times and maybe I haven't explained it fully, but that's my stance against moderation. It's why when people call me something like a pale bleeder potato, I leave it. If somebody says I'm an effing idiot, I leave it. Because I feel like what moderation does, and I saw this all the time on GameSpot, all the time, because people know if something will be moderated, and they'll say it just because they know. Well, they'll even take the temporary ban or whatever, or whatever that is, because they know that you read it, and so they're essentially saying a message to the moderator at that point, and nobody else sees them act out like that. When I act out in public, if I went to Walmart right now and started screaming at people, everybody sees me screaming at people, right? And I might be ejected eventually, but they didn't go back and Men in Black flash me and say, you never saw that guy scream.
Yeah, this guy was
and instead everybody's like, do you remember that screaming guy that got kicked out eventually because he was incessantly screaming? When you moderate heavily like that, nobody sees it. There is no public accountability, and it increases the anonymity. Am I saying that right? I can't say it right now. I'm thinking of it too much. Of the internet, right? Yeah. Because you know that you're not going to look like an idiot in public because nobody's going to see it.
Now, and when I'm talking about this, I don't think there are things that we just let everything go, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I mentioned kicking the guy out that's screaming. Yeah. You know.
I have moderated things on my own videos, but that's because it was people being very weird. Like talking,
I'll have to ask you that after the video.
Well, yeah, just being very weird, and I'm like, we don't need you as part of my community. Don't need you. So things like that, I'm okay. But for the most part, if anyone has like
and that's your prerogative to do.
And so that's the thing is, it's like I think moderation there's a point for it, and there's a reason for it. You're trying to keep. So I'm not about Wild West right now, because I do understand that moderation will help a page grow.
There has to be some form.
I just want
like I delete the spam ones.
I usually want accountability. Yeah, well, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm saying
I don't know if everybody does, but I do.
Yours is more Wild West probably than what I accept.
No, I just have a community I can trust typically.
Yeah, that's probably good. Yeah. But like even so, let's go back to Board Game Revolution, because I think this is banning Chris. My question was what's
gained?
What rule? Was broken.
Yeah, post it.
That's all I want to know. What rule was broken?
They would have said rude. It was a rude comment. It was somehow.
A rude comment.
To ask a question, I guess.
What? And I even saw if that was, and that's the thing where it's like hard to know, because I tried to go back and find the threads that Chris was referencing. They're all gone that I can tell, because I wanted to see, was that rude? Because again, I didn't read Chris's comment as rude, but obviously, Thomas or whoever mod read it as rude. But I think that's the problem. This is text, right? So as a moderator, you have to have a little bit of like understanding, be like, okay, what was the intent? Yeah. Was this a personal attack? Because I didn't think it was a personal attack. I think he was just, maybe calling it hypocrisy, which is, again, is that a rule? So I just wish I could see more even keel moderation.
Yeah, or at least not banning as the first response.
Correct. I don't think you should ban and then expect a response.
Unless...
Because that's now is, well, you can talk to me. I'm like...
So at GameSpot, we had to make a case if we outright banned someone. Yeah. So there are people that will essentially, it's kind of like a police assisted suicide, where they're like, I don't want this account anymore, and I'm gonna like insure it, and they'll post like murder gifs. I've seen the worst stuff people will post, and just because they know they're going to get instantly banned, they're going to get IP banned. They are done, right? And that's how they just want to throw a temper tantrum and get arrested, and whatever analogy you want. But then there are people that are just like, okay, dude, you're being antagonistic, and so we would have to do warnings, and then eventually temporary bans, and then eventually full on bans.
Did you guys have ban appeals? That people could submit a ban appeal? That's something that I've seen on Twitch.
When you were banned, your only access was to that moderation forum. Yeah. Where you could then go and post. And then if you abuse that, then we would
something I've seen on Twitch that would be pretty cool is if you get banned from a Twitch user's videos or whatever, you can submit an appeal and they can go back and look at your chat logs.
Of course. And see, because even the police don't think they're perfect. Yeah. And that's like real world stuff. No moderation's perfect. People make mistakes all the time.
And that's something
or maybe you just honestly didn't know. Maybe you didn't check your hey, you were acting out and it was all one session. You're just sitting there and you don't even realize you're breaking a rule, and they message you as a mod saying, hey, you can't do that, but you're not paying attention. And so then you break it twice, three times.
I think the one that really bothered me with Chris is it seemed vindictive, because he was also banned from the buy-sell trade group, right? Which has crossover moderation. And so it's like, okay, so you didn't like him in the Board Game Revolution because he was bringing, in your opinion, he was stirring trouble, stirring issues. Yeah. Was he breaking rules in the Board Game Revolution trade group? Or not? I don't know if it's the same. I don't know if they're linked. I know they have crossover mods. But that was something that was really interesting too. Like, at that point, it seemed personal.
Well, it's just whatever the heck they want, right? Because there's nowhere, I read the rules of BGR, and nowhere does it say you will be removed from all things that I admin. Yeah. It just mentions BGR.
Yeah, so that to me,
it seems very personal. It's just whatever the heck they want.
Did Chris go and make a very inappropriate sales post? I highly doubt it. I've actually seen his posts. So I feel like at that point we're seeing more personal attacks and not... And so that just makes it so kind of, I feel like we could get lost in the weeds here.
Sure.
It just makes me, again, as a creator, like super nervous to want to talk about anything, because you're like, man, am I going to get
as blocked? A creator? And I want to come back to that because I think that's important. I have kind of 2 points, and I think the first one leads into exactly what you're saying here. So you had mentioned before about how they're a private they're a private group. They can make their own.
That's what, and I stand by
correct.
That, right?
To a point, right? Yeah. So ISPs are their own company, right? The Idaho Electric Company is its own company, but it is regulated and forced to be a certain way because it got big enough
to where essentially, at what point
do you have a responsibility to do that? Steam, by Valve, it's a video game distribution company and semi-developer at this point. There was a game, essentially it's a store, right? And you can upload anything you want to the store. Somebody made a game called Hated. Did you ever hear about this? Hated. In Hated, you play as a person that's hated. It's essentially a teenager that's tired of people bullying them, and so you get your guns and your grenades and you go and you shoot people.
No, I've heard of this.
That was the game.
Yeah.
And they said, no, we're not allowing that. Yeah. And there was this huge discussion. Game,
Postal was very similar.
Kind of like that, but not satirical at all. Yeah. Very much we want to be
a black and white game.
No, it was color. It was color. But you could brutally beat a mom with her baby. Kind of it was it's a terrible thing,
and
right?
Quickly, and this video found itself on King of Average's channel.
what I'm pointing out is, first of all, people discussed it.
Yeah.
Right. Passionately at times, right? But it wasn't just no. That's it. No discussion at all. And eventually, they actually did allow it. What they said is, as the largest. By far the largest market share, to the point where they fear government regulation about this kind of stuff, right? Yeah. Because they have like a 70%, I think, now. Share. At the time, even higher, because Origin hadn't really gone up.
Epic Store
didn't even exist at the time, so they had no competition almost. Yeah. And so they had a huge market share on this, and they're like, we can't be the ones controlling an entire industry. People need a place to be able to decide what they'll buy and not buy, and it's not our decision. They went from a company that's like, oh, I can decide what to put on my product, to we don't feel comfortable deciding an entire industry's conversation or an entire industry's decision on you get this game, not that game. Yeah. Oh, that game is anti-Christian, so no. Or that game is pro-Christian, no. Or whatever hot topic button or political thing you want to do. Right, and so they said essentially unless it's breaking a law, nothing. Everything's allowed. Was the decision they ultimately did.
Their decision. Yeah. Interesting choice.
And now that there's more competition, maybe they can start doing that again, right? Because you can go to Epic Game Store, and that does have a fairly good market share because Epic has tons of money, right? Yeah. But when consumers don't have a choice, right? ISPs, electric companies, regulation happens to force them to allow and not allow and act in certain ways that a regular company wouldn't. So when does the board game industry get to a point where BGG realizes that as the by far biggest gaming site for board games ever, period, end of discussion, by a landslide, do they have a responsibility to be more hands-off on controlling an entire industry's discussion around board games?
And just keep their moderation even keeled.
Yeah, and it's a discussion. It was a discussion for Steam, for Valve, and it should be a discussion here. But we can't discuss on BGG about it, of course.
Of course not.
Of course not.
It's a conversation I don't know if we can actually answer. Again, as we said, it's like a rhetorical question. You're just throwing it out there.
Food for thought, right?
Food for thought.
That leads me, though, to the point I think you were making. So we're talking about me getting banned. We're talking about Liege of Games getting banned. Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, I don't remember if the camera was rolling or not. Oh, you did, because you talked about how journalistic he was about this. Yeah. Now, he is not a journalist per se, in that he's not trained in that. But please point me to the journalists that are covering board games right now, right? Yep. That like Kickstarter board games and stuff like that. I'm not talking the pop ones that go video games and get the video game journalists that do that, or the pop sci journalists to do that. But there aren't really any, right? But I have a press badge to the Gen Con, right, as a press member. Yep. So when it comes to then, I have to be careful because people will think I'm wanting special treatment or something like that. So I'm just thinking in general, because I'm not a part of this group. I don't give a crap. So it doesn't bother me either way. But fundamentally as an industry, do we want it to where the biggest board game site is banning members of the press?
Yeah. That's a good question.
Okay, so he asked this question, and it was a hard question. Are you interested in this? Or are you not? Is that him just participating, or is that a press person investigating?
Yeah.
Is he doing research for a video?
I think that's a
and should you
very
be
good
stifling
point that we're not talking about, because, and what happened is
at the end of the day, Chris is not just any old Chris.
Yeah, he has a
Chris
platform
has a platform and is looking into things and is questioning things.
Yep.
Are we wanting to have people not do that?
Yeah. We should encourage that. We should be encouraging our people in our community to dig up and uproot injustices or weird things happening.
Yeah.
And when we silence them and say no, it just seems wrong.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem right. And I feel like that's what happened here. He questioned, and the thing was just funny is the topic that Chris was referring to, promotion. Our YouTube space specifically gets hammered by people because they're calling us in bed with the publishers and shills, and we have to. And I don't get paid for much, but I make sure I label my description every video my relationship with the publisher. Have I done work with them before? Was this a sponsored video? Was the review paid for or supplied? The game supplied? I make sure I list it on every video now, because I'm like, I gotta feel like I owe it to my audience so they know full disclosures. And then you have these other people who aren't revealing it. So that's what Chris was doing.
Yeah.
He just wants to say, hey, I'm trying to figure out, is this a paid for ad? Or is it not paid for ad?
Yeah, he should be able to even join a group for the sole purpose of getting screenshots of things, and then leaving. Like that's I don't want to say that's his job. He can choose to run his channel however he wants.
Yeah.
But that's like you can't stifle conversation to the point where people can't even investigate things. You said, so we're making this video talking about this, and you tried to look up his sources.
Yeah,
and you can't find his sources.
I spent a few.
I get notified when BGG does stuff. They're like, oh, this is going down on BGG. So I go to look into it to see, is this something I need to report on, something I need to look into? Yeah. And I can't read it.
Yeah, it's all blocked.
It's all blocked. I have no idea what happened. You're gonna have to tell me. And so now I have to take somebody's, comment on it, or hope they took pictures or something like that. Yeah. It's like if the cops suddenly decided to just like always turn off their cameras anytime they pleased.
And that bothers me when they do that.
Yes,
so, yeah,
yes.
It's a problem.
I recently found out that they could. I didn't know they could, but they could be like cameras off, and it's like, what the heck?
What's the point?
Yeah. No, that's dumb.
So I think we're just saying transparency and blocking people who are just asking questions is anti-transparency. Sure. It's against what I think would better our community.
Exactly. And that's why like court rulings are made public, right? Yeah. It's why even the cop video is public. It's not even just for the press. Yeah. It's that's why like I went back and said like you have to post why you moderated, because people need to be able to scrutinize and critique the industries they're a part of, or whatever communities they're a part of.
And the thing that really impacted me too with Chris, and this is where he talked about the only reason we know this happened is because he has a platform.
Yes, otherwise it would have been silent.
How many other voices have we lost for who knows what reason? Yeah. Because it's just someone flicking a switch.
It breaks my heart that I literally get about 5 emails a day from people pleading for me to cover either a Kickstarter that's doing something, or a moderation, or a website, or another video, or whatever it might be. I mean, and sometimes it's just like, oh, this person didn't disclose, blah blah blah, or or whatever. And so I have to, if I get to it, like look into it, and then decide is it enough to put on the airtime, right, and stuff like that. But it's because they don't have a voice. Right? Yeah. Everybody emailing me, I mean, what are they going to do? Yeah. You can't go on BGG and discuss it. You can't go on BGR and discuss it. We can make this video and they can't touch us. Yeah. Right? And so we're exempt from that.
We'll see.
No, we have you seen talk shows?
I mean, I'm just saying I could be banned.
You could be. Well, yeah, but they can't touch your channel. They can't touch your channel.
Just saying,
you're good. They can't touch this video. They got nothing. And that's been because I've looked into that heavily, because people like to put stuff like, oh, that's that you can't just say things that aren't true.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've personally looked into that. Right. But I've looked into this stuff like where Whoopi Goldberg says that a person who was found innocent and still calls him a murderer.
Yeah.
But that's allowed because everybody understands it's her opinion.
Yeah.
You're not coming across as factual. Yeah, exactly.
Truth.
That's where you get in trouble. But your opinion can be your opinion, and it can go against something like you could call somebody a murderer that was found guilty. I could call
That's why
O.J.
at the
Simpson
beginning of
a
your
murderer
videos-
right now, and he can't do anything to
That's
me.
why at the beginning of all your videos say, please don't sue me. This
That
my
is
opinion.
no. That's why I said that, because I was freaking nervous about it,
Yeah.
because I'm saying crap like this, and these people are vindictive. These people go out. I mean, he didn't just get banned. He got personally messaged. He even mentions this, that it was kind of weird to be pinged 3 times by a moderator at like, why did you say that? What were you going for?
Yeah.
It's like,
what was your intention?
why
of this
isn't that a
post?
public response to the post, right? And instead, you're getting direct messages from these moderators. Like they are to be able to go back on BGG, so I could respond to people who were responding to the videos. I have not uploaded a video since, and I won't. But my old videos are still on there. I used to upload them, and people still make comments, and I want to be able to reply, and I couldn't reply to them.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I need to get it back. I had to personally message the moderator that banned me and tell him and promise him I wouldn't do it again.
And what did you do to get banned?
Do you know how, like...
What did you do?
So there was a thread about me that was like, people were really upset.
Yeah.
And so I went on there saying, I never meant anything like that. I'm sorry if people got upset. I wasn't trying to be like vindictive or hateful or anything. That's literally my message.
Okay.
And it got deleted like instantly.
From your perspective.
Instantly.
Again, they read it wrong. They read it.
Well, I posted exactly what I read. Like in my
was
video,
this?
you can go back and
Was it this last video?
No, it was my BGG video.
Oh, okay,
BGG
yeah.
sucks video, I think is
Okay.
what I labeled that one. Right? But like I went like, this is what I said. And so it instantly deleted. So they were obviously watching the channel, which means they were allowing all the other people, you know, calling me names and doing all this stuff, and that was fine,
Which
I
is
guess.
fine.
But
Yep.
because I was dismissing the issue. You can't disagree on.
And so that's
on
my
BGG.
problem is like silencing that kind
Yeah.
of voice.
Yeah.
Being like I'm like against the norm or whatever, that should not be silenced. You know, if
Yeah.
you're silencing people because they're doing hate speech or they're being clearly racist or something, obviously ban that. You know, moderate that. And I don't even know if you do ban that or do you just moderate it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's just it. Moderation needs to be your last resort, not your first. To be honest, like people are very trigger happy with that because they pretend that that's their only solution. But there's not. They could have deleted his comment if they really felt bad about it. But that doesn't mean he has to be banned.
Yeah, ban it.
Yeah,
so that's what I
you
thought.
have to ban somebody forever because of that.
Maybe you message him and say, hey, you know, we didn't appreciate that.
Yeah, just explain it, warn
Something.
it, or better yet, do a public response. The reason in GameSpot we were encouraged to do public responses is because it sets a tone and it lets everybody see that, so everybody knows, oh, that's not allowed. Because if he made a mistake and is against the rules, other people might honestly make that mistake too, especially if they see a comment up there.
That's why I kept asking.
So you can direct a conversation.
I've replied to Thomas, and I was like, "What did he break? What rule did he break?" Because I'm curious. I don't want to break the same rule.
Yeah, we were encouraged to be there. Oh, okay. Imagine, see how people drive around a cop when a cop's driving out there. Now imagine a cop never drove out in public, but would randomly just come out from like the woodwork and like arrest people.
Yeah.
Like being engaged. If you see a comment filled of admins talking and discussing with the community, people are gonna act right.
Yeah.
Right. But if there's no admin in sight, they might act up.
Yeah.
If you're not involved in your community, you're not publicly posting and controlling that. I talk about this all the time. The reason I was able to make such a negative video that I did yesterday and have everybody be like literally 99% of the comments. I had like 2 negative comments.
Yeah.
Everybody else, and they're not like mean or hateful or spiteful. They're okay. There's a few more than 2, but I have hundreds of comments on there. So like literally, the vast majority of people don't just flip out. Because I feel like leadership reflects into the community.
Yeah.
And if you're being mature and about something, even negative, you're not going to get all of those trolls.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if your community has a problem, you need to look at yourself at some point. Now, there are some things you can't control, like, you know, somebody could share it, you know, outside your community, and then outside community members come in, right? And then they can ruin things, but they're not part of your community.
Yeah.
But like, I see the people that comment all the time on my videos, and that's why I'm able to discuss the things I am. Whereas I don't think you could on something like that, because people aren't prepared to even deal with that, and you haven't fostered a community that can maturely discuss things.
Yeah.
You've discussed a community that can't handle any kind of conflict.
So I think this kind of all boils down to transparency and talking,
if nothing
about,
else, and that's and that's why we started that way. Like at least
be upfront about what the rules are. Be
Yeah.
upfront about your relationships with publishers. And again, this all boiled down to, with Chris's question, is this paid or is this a shout out? And it's funny because I was reading some conversations because people were calling Thomas a hypocrite on one thing, and I had to really dive into the conversation on this one.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, are you, because Thomas was saying, I am not paid for, like my posts aren't paid for, but I do.
His opinions aren't. Yes,
my opinions are not paid for. My posts aren't paid for, but I do get paid for.
Yes,
by Board Game Revolution.
This is what every YouTuber that wants to get paid but also do reviews says.
Yeah.
Oh, the company paid me for these 6 videos, and I just got like, let's say $7,000 for this, but they didn't pay for this review.
Yeah.
So this review out of the 8 videos I've posted is somehow wholly separate from that and untouched from that money.
I was talking to another creator today about this, and I said, it looked like if I said this, Game Brigade got paid. I didn't. Yeah. I didn't get paid.
Yeah.
Game Brigade got paid.
BGR gets paid, and it pays me, but I didn't. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So maybe you weren't paid for the post, but if you were paid by that publisher to cover their stuff on your page in any way,
sure,
banner ad, giveaway, just disclose.
Yeah,
I have a relationship with this publisher.
And again, like the other mature industries that have legit journalism and press that are like they do this now, right? There's a big push in video games to do this, where like now the reason I know CBS Interactive owns GameSpot because they would disclose that, especially if they ever linked to something that was on CBS, right? Like there was a senator that was against like Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that, and so they would link to CBS. Of course they would, right? But they would then say, hey, we're owned by the parent company, CBS Interactive. Yeah. FYI.
And so I think that kind of boils down to, the whole root of this crux as we're talking about, which is
just more transparency,
just keep transparency
in action and lay off the ban if at all possible.
Yeah.
You want to foster a community, not kick people out.
We want people to share we want people to feel comfortable that they can speak their truthful thoughts without obviously disparaging anyone. Because I want to make sure people are clear. I'm not against I do understand points of it, but I do think we need to be allowing more open conversation, and if people don't necessarily agree with a viewpoint, they shouldn't be silenced and punished for that.
I think the last thing I'll say on this, at least this subject, unless you bring something up, is it reminds me of when I first started my channel. I wanted my channel just like, and I feel like if you went to like Board Game Spotlight or even BGR or any of these places, they're like, we want to be just a positive group. We want to have fun and be happy about board games and whatever. So no negativity at all. And that's exactly how I ran my YouTube channel at the beginning, when I did miniature painting, and then even when I started covering board games that I liked. And people would beg me to cover these games, and I would just not speak about them if I had anything negative. Yeah. I would just, so I'd have these glaring omissions in my coverage, and people would be like, well, why, whatever. And I would tell them, it's like, well, I just try to cover the things I'm excited about. That's how I'd even.
It's very hard as a new reviewer to share your thoughts negatively on a game.
Well, and because I'm stupid, and I don't think about the game that way. Like the YouTube game that way. Yeah. I didn't think that at all. What I thought is, I just want to be a positive impact on people. I want people to be happy they watched my video. Yeah. And be like, I'm glad I watched that video. My day is better because I watched your video, and that's what I wanted. Okay. And it got to the point where I realized that there's this silent community that can't speak up, isn't heard, isn't covered, that are being abused or mistreated, or feel that they've been wronged either by a company or by a group or whatever it might be. And nobody is saying anything about it because everybody just wants to be happy. Yeah. And so somebody needs to take that hit publicly, right? There's a lot of people in the community that agree with a lot of the stuff I cover, or a lot of the stuff you've said even just today, but they don't say it publicly because they don't feel like they can. Yeah. And so that's what a journalist's job is just dig into the stuff and say the stuff that you can't. Like if I go out and start touting about my hatred for the president of the United States of America, I'm going to get on some list.
Again, man, you're making this video very hard for my channel.
Sorry, I don't even think that. But you know what I'm saying? Like I just got on somebody's list, right? But if a journalist says that, you don't that's their job is to look into that and have an opinion on the president. Yeah. So I mean, it's important to cover these things, and even though sometimes it's not fun. A lot of times people will say, "Thank you for making this video," and I say, "You're welcome. I wish I didn't have to." I wish I didn't have to make the video about BGR and BGG.
Exactly, just like this one. That's a great point.
I would love to have fun. Wouldn't this have been better if I came over and played a board game?
Yeah, that never happens though. We played like 1 or 2 games.
That's a lot for me.
Yeah. I sometimes question if Michael even plays games.
Mm-hmm. And then I say I played Conan. He's like, "Is that even really a game?" That doesn't sound too Euro-y.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm more of a card player at this point. Okay, my friend.
That's fine.
But yeah, we pretty much wrapped up all the things that I wanted to say. I mean, I appreciate you coming over and
of course
having a conversation about it.
Always happy to discuss this.
Hopefully this video has some sort of value to people out there, even if it's just, like I said, random conversation, throwing it out there. Yeah,
well, I think so I could sit there and stew about what I want to talk about, right? But I think having this conversation, like I took notes. I was like, oh, I'm glad you brought that up, and then do that. And I think a lot of creators do stuff like what we do all the time, which is we were talking even before the camera rolled, right? And I think it's there's a lot of good that isn't captured from that.
You said things that I don't remember what the heck you were saying before the camera rolled, and I was like,
it was great.
Shit, let me go hit the record button.
and then I was talking about how I probably said something nice about your channel or something. You're like, oh man.
Hit the record.
Yeah, go subscribe to Game Brigade for really nice content on board games.
If you are subscribed to King of Average, make sure you unsubscribe and subscribe to Game Brigade.
It's a zero-sum game. There's only one subscribe. Yes. Who's going to get the free Twitch sub? Who's going to get
the Prime subs?
Send
it over. No, actually, if you are part of my community and you aren't already subscribed to King of Average, although I think you're like number 2 or 3 in terms of my audience of who watches.
Cool. Apparently, the exact same people, I swear they open Alex's video and my videos at the same time. I feel because he's been the number 1 like forever.
Really?
Forever, yeah.
I think mine might be Quackalope.
Quack?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually want to go look now. I'm kind of curious. We're kind of going back into the woods.
Anyway, no, we can end this early. Guys, thanks so much for watching. It's always a pleasure to share this. If you have any comments or I guess insights into this, like I said, I shared a lot of like moderator stuff, but I'm sure other people have different point of views.
Let us know what you guys think, and maybe tell us if we're right or wrong. I'd love to hear it.
Unless it's mean, and then your comment will be deleted.